There, the light's on.
All right. Is it
Lights on.
going? Okay. Okay. So, back to where we were, Cindy.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah,
So
the last one.
the relaxed alertness is optimal. So when kids feel that they're in a safe, nurturing environment, lo and behold, what we've known as educators really is supported by the research.
Mhm.
That now with MRIs, they can see that, yes, gosh, that it's proof that our brains actually respond differently in that environment. The other part of my studies that I've seen, I think, applied to my work as a leader, talked about the different archetypes of leadership that appeal to me. The idea of, what is a leader? What is our idea of a leader? And across cultures, there are many stories that are told about leaders and the acts of leadership. And what was interesting to me and fascinating at the same time, I guess, is that so many times we hear about heroes as that charismatic, singular person who makes that ultimate sacrifice. And we see that across cultures. But the more I read about the new thinking and the new leadership and the new applications about chaos theory and some of the other sciences, the more I'm reading about that shift of leaders being people who can facilitate collaboration and facilitate innovation in organizations, that it's not all about that one person in charge. It's about...
So kind of a lot of what we heard today.
Yes, it's about the
Wow.
strength of the group. Yeah, in fact, I talked to our presenter today about this connection to Montessori, and it's just so interesting to me how everything seems to be fitting together at this point in my life, because our presenter said that his girlfriend is a Montessori teacher of all
wow.
things.
Wow.
And so I talked to him at length about this idea of leadership, with the influence of Montessori. And he was saying that it was something that had been intriguing him too, because he's a leadership guru, and so I said, I'll send you the PowerPoint. But and so the idea that this archetype of leadership is changing too, in response to these complex issues and changes in our society. So there's this leadership of engagement. And I brought along with me a couple of books that I was just going to show you. This book, The Power to Transform, is one that I purchased at a Montessori conference, and it's leadership that brings learning and schooling to life. And I earmarked one of the pages because here the author, who is Stephanie Marshall, and I talk about her in my culminating paper, she talks about living in an escalating social, economic, and educational time where there are injustices and unsustainable paradoxes, and how we have to compensate for some of these differences because there's so much increasing ignorance and poverty for some, while others are flourishing, and the haves and have-nots, that divide is...
And having to coexist.
Right.
Wow.
So how do we lead people to understand that to create a really sustainable place on this earth, that there has to be some equity? And that's going to take everyone working together. It can't just be a dictator stepping in. We've seen that, and that's failed. But how do we get the buy-in of everyone to make those sacrifices for the good of all? And so I just think that we're at a very important time in our history on the face of the earth, that we have opportunity. There are definitely challenges, but there's opportunity for change, for big transformational thinking and change, not just in education but globally. And so this increased innovation will be necessary, and our complexity science rests on these webs of interaction. how do we all fit together? So these new idea frameworks, the connections, the web, chaos, autopoiesis is the self-organizing of a system, and bifurcation is that point of time where everything comes together and from which the changes branch off. So there are layers of leadership as they relate to the cosmic lessons, and what I am striving to do is to put together an idea of leadership that looks at each one of those strands of Montessori's cosmic lessons and puts together leadership characteristics that fit together with that. And to that end, I've been researching virtual leadership. What does leadership look like when it's just pure ideas? When it's just online, for example, and you don't have that physical, that interaction with that person.
Mm-hmm.
And then what I also found was generative leadership. And it was interesting to me because these are astronauts, scientists who have put together this, it's generative leadership, shaping new futures for today's schools. And they talk about social science roots, living systems, the second foundational element, the brain-mind system.
Wow.
It was so, I got so excited when I was reading this because I thought, wow, these are the questions I've had. And then generative school leadership. And this is all about innovation and how do you generate new ideas and respond to change. And then they give some ideas to help create that environment in an organization, and then tools and things. So really what caught my eye in this is that they're looking at the mind-brain connection and all of the leadership characteristics that are going into that. And I see the connections to Montessori in that we have these tools and we're now able to say, I think we're at a time when we're going to be able to support a lot of the practices that we know work with children, and that Montessori researched, but now we can we can quantify it, we can research it and show the science behind it. So my cosmological leadership idea links to Montessori's cosmic lessons. It has the mind-brain connections and looks at our environmental and sustainability focus to help us create an idea of leadership that's focused on the well-being of all. So we hear a lot from the business world about leadership, and even now in education we keep hearing these applications of business theories to education. But I really believe that with human organizations we need a model of leadership that's not just about producing the same product. Children are not widgets. They're not rubber stamped. They're not cookie cutter. We have to have something that's responsive to the needs of communities and recognizes the differences in individuals. So in the cosmological leadership model that I'm working on, the leader would be monitoring progress through authentic pieces and not just data, not just numbers that are being spit out. That seems to be the model of the day, that we're measuring progress simply with those numbers. And that there are connections to the world, that it's not just about having a business partner that's going to pay for your end-of-year banquet, but there's a real connection, that we're making an impact and that we're responsive and we're learning from one another. So my journey in Endicott has been tremendously meaningful for me. And I told you earlier about the saga of my trip in May.
Yes.
And it was so fun to actually see Endicott College, the physical building, and to meet people in person who were my online colleagues, and to put a face, a physical being with that energy of thought that we'd shared online. And to make it even better, I got to hold my niece, Maya. And it was just, to me, the whole trip was about really how perfect life can be when everything comes together. Just, it was totally unplanned.
And what an honor to be able to be asked to go speak.
Yes,
too.
that was
Can't forget
huge.
that.
That was
Yeah.
huge. That was a tremendous gift for me. I really felt.
Well, it sounds like you really have enjoyed the program and have
Oh,
learned
yes.
so much.
Well, thank you, Cindy, and I am so grateful to you for staying with me after this conference
You're welcome.
today and going through this presentation. I think what I take away as I end the program is that there is hope for the future. I think sometimes I get really bogged down in the day-to-day business of school, and I sometimes think, oh gosh,
Yeah.
where are we going with all of this? But I see through this study, implications for educational practice. I've understood many more challenges of leadership, and not just systemically, but within me. What are my paradigms? Why do I think the way that I do? And why do I perceive the world in the way that I do? And I think more than just giving me answers, the greatest gift that I've gotten from this program is to remember to ask questions and to keep wondering about the world around us. And I think sometimes we forget that.
And isn't that the Montessori philosophy?
It is, exactly.
So you've totally embraced the whole concept.
Yeah. So it's made me think about the challenges to integrate Montessori in public schools, and some of the ethical and moral considerations for me as I go forward to really think about what I'm doing in a thoughtful, meaningful way, to think about the opportunities for 21st century learning, because so often I'll hear parents say, Montessori, isn't that out of date? That was a long time ago that she did that research. Why are we still using that today? And what's exciting for me now is to read about the 21st century fluencies and say, oh my gosh, finally, finally the rest of us have caught up with Dr. Montessori. So I think it's an opportunity to provide a really radical education. But with radical education, it's radical leadership too. And so often we talk about transformation in educational settings, and we forget what leadership is going to look like in response to that. So it's just been, again, another example of how the universe is really coming together for me, because I'm able to take all of this that I've learned in this program and put it together with what I'm doing in the Catalyst seminars and make these connections. So,
neat.
Yeah,
Neat.
it's really neat. So thank you. That's the end of it, and thank you for being such a great audience.
You're welcome.
I really appreciate you helping me.
You're welcome. You are so
Yeah.
welcome.
So now it's dinner time. So thank you, Endicott, and we'll turn it off. Yeah.
Okay.
And maybe should we have to press the red button?